This is Henry Frederick of Headline Surfer, and this is the Roundtable. To my left is Stan Escudero, a foreign diplomat retired from the countries of Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Azerbaijan, and most recently the chair of the Republican Executive Committee for Volusia County. And to my right is Dana Doherty Swanson, state committee woman for the Republican Party, former delegate to 2 national conventions, and also a blogger for Headline Surfer, in addition to what Stan does. The Daytona 500 Speed Weeks. The big announcement, besides Danica Patrick being on the pole and Jimmy Johnson coming back and winning, the Daytona International Speedway wants to expand the racetrack to offer more amenities. They're talking about putting in $250 million of NASCAR's money to do this, seeing that, this speedway has been around since 1959 and it kind of outworn its usefulness in terms of the way it looks. It's not modernized like a lot of stadiums. Stan, there was talk about making a proposal to get sales tax concessions from the state with the modernized facility. Sound pretty good, right?
Well, frankly, I support the request. I've seen a presentation on it, and given the fact that the Speedway is the core of, along with the beach, that which brings tourists to Daytona Beach and which supports its economy, and given that they're investing some $250 million of, in effect, their own money, it seems to be perfectly reasonable that they should request a tax abatement. It's no different than professional football teams do for their statements, for their stadiums, or baseball teams, or what have you. And this is our equivalent of the Superdome. So it makes perfect sense to me. And I think the way it is presented and put together, and particularly since we're not talking about reductions in tax monies that would go to the county or the city, that it would benefit us locally a very great deal, and it's something that we should certainly support.
Now, Dana, I talked to Glenn Ritchie, the former mayor of Daytona, and also with Jeff Hentz, the CVB czar in Daytona, and they were at the press conference that we were at when Joey Chitwood of the Speedway announced this modernization. Do you think the taxpayers will be supportive of this, considering the economic development issues that are behind this?
Well, when you think about it, we want to keep Daytona as the #1 most recognized name in NASCAR, because how many weeks a year does that keep our hotel rooms occupied in Daytona, helps keep jobs in Daytona, the restaurants? How many waiters and waitresses are getting tips from people visiting, the hotel rooms being booked? With NASCAR, with the Speedway being a primary, Daytona being the main focus, when you think Daytona, you think NASCAR. We want to keep that front and center. We want it looking good.
Well, I would argue that you figure Speed Weeks is 2 weeks minimum. You've got the Rolex in January, which has kind of like been pushed back a little bit. So it's almost like a mini Speed Weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the smaller races leading up to the signature race, the Daytona 500. Then in the summer, you come back and you have the Coke Zero 400. It used to be the Pepsi 400. Before that was a Firecracker 400. Whatever name you want to put on it, whatever brand. I would argue that between 4 to 6 weeks a year, the hotels are pretty much tied up with tourism. You take those 4 to 6 weeks out of the year's schedule, there isn't much there.
Oh, well, I think without that money, I think a large number of our hotels, our restaurants, bars, other types of establishments, business establishments that cater to tourists would go under, especially in these hard times. And it's not like the France family is going to move. They're as committed to Daytona as the rest of us. They have been ever since Bill France started NASCAR in Daytona. But I think that I won't say that we owe them, because of course they've made a great deal of money, but then they've taken the risks. I say though that we should recognize their importance to the city and the county, and we should respond by offering them this tax break.
I think also people have to realize too, and Dana, I think you'd readily concede that when you have a big enterprise like NASCAR and the Daytona International Speedway, and it's on public property, the city owns the land, you're gonna have to offer concessions in order to get what they bring in, which is the sales tax. I mean, you get those benefits, and it's amazing how they pour all this money into places like the Miami Marlins. They had all these free agents, and they had the stadium filled, and the owner ships all the players out of town like he's done 2-3 times before. I would think that NASCAR, being a long tradition as it is, especially in Florida, either of you can think of a team besides the Miami Dolphins that's been here as long as Daytona International Speedway in Florida? The Orlando Magic is 30 years or less?
No, the professional teams used Florida for spring training, for
Right.
example, for baseball and that type of thing for a long, long time. But there weren't any professional teams actually locating and playing here as their home base. And of course, until quite recently relative to the Speedway.
And I think people also...
Speedway is what put this part of Florida on the map.
Yeah, and plus you've got South Florida, you've got Homestead Speedway. I mean, Florida has 2 tracks.
Yeah, but Daytona is the most well-known, and when you think about it, Daytona is so close to, you just go down 92, you have the
Orlando.
land, well, no, I'm
Oh.
talking the West Volusia
Right.
side, that for the hotels, you're not just talking Daytona side, you're talking throughout the county.
Well, the other thing too that people may not realize is that, sure, you're gonna pay a premium price to stay in a hotel like the Hilton in Daytona, but they have great specials if they do the multi-night runs. But you're gonna get good buys in hotels in New Smyrna Beach, DeLand, Deltona,
Of course.
even places like Orlando.
It all
People will
fills up.
stay there because they wanna go to the race and then they wanna see the attractions.
And for that matter, why do you think the motorcyclists come to Daytona? It's because the Speedway makes one think of speed. It makes one think of automobiles and engines and the kind of noise that you also hear from Harley Davidsons. And so they began coming for much the same reason. And now if you drive, for example, if you go to DeLand during Bike Week, you'll find that they have a mini Bike Week over there. And there are rides and runs all over the county. And the various cities, Sanford, DeLand, and what have you, they play to that, and they make money off of it too.
And also, when you think about it, is that the Speedway, in this age of modern technology, about the HD TVs and things like that, the Speedway needs to look its best on TV. And NASCAR, it's also being visualized across the world. And also, the Speedway nowadays, when you think about Bike Week, a lot of times that same area is also utilized for some motorcycle events and things like
Swap
that.
meets.
Absolutely true.
Well, remember too, you have the high ovals of Daytona, like a Hot Wheels track, like when you're a little kid. But you have that Erectaset look on the outside with this, they're talking about putting skin around it, having 10 football fields worth of restaurants and amenities, escalators, on-site parking, which people have been crying about for years.
Well, sure.
I mean, this is
It's
this
a
is a
question
gold
also
mine.
of standing up to your competition. I mean, Daytona may be the best known race and racetrack in the country, but it's not the only one. I mean, there's Darlington, there's Talladega, there are others.
Well, and I can
And
tell you also, like Texas.
We don't want the interest to shift to some other
Well,
city,
even like
some other
Texas,
state.
even like Texas Motor Speedway. I mean, you're talking about a modern, a beautiful facility that has a lot of the amenities we've talked about. But go ahead.
And also one other thing is that when you're talking on-site parking in restaurants, it will also make it much more convenient for people when they're going to the facility and leaving the facility, because so often you have to go into a race, 3-4 hours before it starts because you know you're going to be in traffic jam. Well, it's a whole lot easier to go in there 3-4 hours and then go to a restaurant on site and sit there, and you're not feeling like I'm just sitting in the bleachers for this time. And also the experience when you're leaving. If you figure, well, I can go and have
You can have dinner.
dinner after the race and sit there and relax and let the first rush of people, it's going to help stabilize the parking going to and from, because people won't mind going earlier because they know they're going to have
The
some.
traffic patterns won't be as haphazard.
Exactly, because I've been outside of that area I used to work for United Way, and was at the Target parking across the street. That takes a long time. It's a whole day event of people just going in there and basically kind of being at a standstill.
I would think that I interviewed David Santiago, a state representative, the Republican who just got elected in November. from Deltona, and he's the one that's putting the legislation in for the sales tax benefit. And we were amazed that it's taken till now for something like this to happen. You would have thought that this would have been done a decade ago when all the NFL and Major League Baseball teams were talking about modernizing their stadiums with retractable roofs and things like that.
Well, I don't know, Henry, it's happening when it's happening. But the point is, I think we're all agreed here, anyway.
They can't go in much
that
longer the way
they
it
are fully
is.
justified in asking for what they're asking for and in making the investment they're making, by virtue of the fact that they have brought enormous amounts of wealth and they've brought many, many new jobs and will bring many, many more.
Well, that's the thing, I
to
mean,
the city and the county.
there's been some argument that, well, they already have the land for virtually nothing. Who are they kidding? They'll have construction jobs. How long can that last? They'll build this facility overnight. But you actually have two
Tell that
ways
to
of,
the guys who are working on the construction.
right, who have no pay right now.
That's right.
But you'll have actually two waves, like Sonny Ivo and I were talking about, State Representative Sonny Ivo were talking about today, is that you'll have the construction end of it, but that will then lead into the service industry jobs that will be created. Plus, I believe it'll force hotels and restaurants to enhance their structures and their facilities to compete, because they're still going to want to have customers coming to them, you know, whether it's before or after the thing. And the other thing that still amazes me is how many people still utilize campgrounds throughout Volusia, even into Flagler County and even Brevard and Seminole. I would think that this is a win-win all the way around for people that love to come here.
I don't see any other way to describe it.
Exactly.
Jason Davis, of course, is the county chair. Just got elected in November by overwhelming margin over Carl Persis, the Democrat. And there was some controversy. Once again, he was in the News Journal in a negative light for making a pitch for the Lusner brothers, Ron Lusner's brother, for they run a campground, own a campground at the Cabbage Patch in Samsula, where, of course, we have one of the signature Bike Week events.
Yes.
Cabbage Patch Wrestling, Coleslaw Wrestling, which draws, I would say that event alone draws 20 to 30,000 bikers.
Probably.
I've been there every year for 15 years, and it never ceases to amaze me, the color and the glamour of raunchiness, but it's one of those events that definitely draws the public's interest. Stan, he appeared before a county board that had to grant a permit approval, and it was expected to pass, but he was there, and he explained to me that he spoke up because he felt somebody from the public should be saying something to show support. But he said he was representing himself as a private citizen. What about that? There was a little bit of controversy in the News Journal about that.
Well, I believe when Jason was elected county chair, he did not give up his right to free speech, did not give up his rights as a citizen or in any way restrict them. As long as he makes it clear that he is appearing and speaking in his private capacity, and he makes no effort whatever to influence, as county chairman, any decision which might be taken by this board or any other board, he has the same right as any other citizen to make an appearance and make a statement. He made his private status very clear before the board. As I understand it, there would have been no question that the permit to conduct this Coleslaw Wrestling would have been renewed anyway. And Jason, in any case, is a biker. He enjoys motorcycle riding and motorcycle activities. He has a great number of friends in the biker community, and he has supported them for years and years as a private individual. It would be almost an abandonment of his personal principles were he not to stand up for something like this as a private citizen. And you have to keep in mind that Jason is not your average politician.
And that's what I want to go to Dana with now. Dana, like Stan is saying, he's not your average politician. He's not your typical politician, actually. He's a very passionate guy about, you know, if something's good, he wants to make sure that that's emphasized. What about the issue, though, if you're a county council, you're the county chair. You're the county chair 24/7, but that doesn't mean you give up your rights to free speech.
Exactly. I mean, anyone who's involved in politics, sometimes, just like on the Republican side, You might be an officer with the Republican Party of Florida or something like that, but people might have their personal support and say, I, as Joe Public, am supporting this candidate or whatnot, because you don't support one candidate over the other with your title. So why can't our county chair do the same and say, I, speaking as Joe Public, saying, I support this. Now, I have never seen coleslaw wrestling. I don't intend to ever see coleslaw wrestling, because the closest thing to coleslaw I'm getting is probably 4th of July, so picnic. But I do believe that the bikers enjoy their coleslaw wrestling, so let them have it. And if Jason believes in it as a Joe Public, Joe citizen, then why not let him speak?
I want to think also,
Yeah.
Henry, that Jason, unlike a lot of politicians, he's not a political calculator. What Jason is a good man whose heart is in the right place. And he's a man of the people. He's not a man of politics.
Well,
What he does is he goes out and he identifies in his heart and in his policies with what the people want. And the people do want coleslaw wrestling at the Cabbage Patch during Bike Week. And given that Bike Week and Oktoberfest are both Biketoberfest are both major contributors to the local economy, it seems to me that we should do whatever is appropriate, whatever we can do to support that. The whole city of Daytona, the whole of Volusia County benefits from it. It's something we've pushed for years. And all Jason is doing is stepping up and saying, yes, and I support it too. Personally, I support it.
Jason told me that he made it clear when he spoke to the News Journal reporter that he said, look, this is something I believe in. It's important to emphasize it. Yes, the vote would have gone through, but I want them to see that there is public support for this. And if there isn't someone from the public here, that doesn't mean they don't support it, but I want them here because I am a representative of the public. I was voted. And he said he also made it clear that he went to see a lawyer, a private attorney, to get advice for legal purposes, and that it was made clear to him that should he come before a vote of the county council, let's say there was an appeal, let's say the thing was denied, and that would eventually go to the county council for final approval or to uphold what the lower board said, he would recuse himself. But see, that wasn't reported in the newspaper because, as we've learned from the past, after he won overwhelmingly, his words are twisted and make him look bad.
Well,
And so I'm surprised that he even talks to them still.
it does somehow seem like the News Journal thinks that Jason has stole their lollipop, but still, in fairness, they did consult a professional ethicist.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
And
because
the ethicist said,
two
absolutely
ethics
nothing
experts
wrong
said, right.
with Jason doing that.
So it kind of made the story stupid, but
Well, they also consulted a couple of Democratic politicians.
Well, that's what I was gonna get to
Critical
next
of
week.
Jason, but that's
That's
a
what I wanted
partisan
to ask.
issue, that's a different
so I wanted to
thing.
ask Dana as the last word on this topic. Why is the News Journal, of all people, I could understand Pat Northey, she's on the council, and she's a Democrat, so that gives you that elasticity of antagonism for the readers, and that's good. It's good to have that sort of back and forth. But why Frank Bruno? Haven't we had enough?
Yes, I think we had enough.
I mean, he's still going to all the chicken dinner events. I saw him at the Tom Stead funeral. I've seen him at the MLK dinner. I've seen him at the dinner for John Johnson at Embry-Riddle when he was honored. Everywhere you go. I saw him at the press conference at the Speedway. He was the only private person there who didn't have some business or elected connection to the Speedway in terms of this whole issue. Stan, what about Frank Bruno? Why doesn't he just go away like
Well,
Paul Persis
I've
did?
never met Mr. Bruno, so I can't.
You sat next to him at a dinner.
Yeah, but we didn't
That wasn't
speak.
very comfortable, was it?
Well, we didn't speak, but that's not the point. I can't speak to what drives him personally, but I can say that I have seen a number of other people at much higher levels in Washington and elsewhere who had extensive and distinguished careers and whose careers came to an end and somehow they couldn't cut the umbilical cord. they kept coming back and hanging around, and some of them made efforts to rebuild their careers, and that's it. Sometimes they succeeded and sometimes they didn't. But it's just that when you've been at a thing long enough, and you've gotten used to all the accolades and the praise and the honors and so forth, you begin somehow sometimes to get the idea that those things are intended for you personally,
But
and not
20
for the position that you hold.
But 20 years as an elected official. They even have the chambers named after him, the Frank T. Bruno Jr. County Council chambers. And if you read the agenda, every single item refers to the Frank T. Bruno Jr. County Council chambers.
Do you
When is
think-
enough enough?
I know, but do you think he might think his career is not yet over and is trying to, like, not yet cut the umbilical cord because he's still hopeful for the future?
Well, that brings us to segment 3. We must jump right into it. In 2 years, Joyce Cusac's seat will be up.
Yes.
She's the at-large, she holds the at-large seat on the county council, 7-member council. Joyce is not sure whether she's gonna re-up again. You know, age is creeping up, health is creeping up, and she's a veteran. She's been around a long time in politics as a former state house representative, and of course, when she ran and won in 2009, she won convincingly. Very popular woman. Not everybody likes her politics, obviously, but I see her as a little more moderate than some of the other Democrats that have been on the council. Do you think that Frank Bruno's waiting and chomping at the bit to get her seat?
I think Frank Bruno, after 20 years as Stanford, he can't quite give up the ghost and is still thinking, look at me, and since he didn't get the one position he wants, he figures maybe he can just slide right back into the county council.
Well, I agree that Ms. Cusack has had a distinguished career. She served honorably and well. And you're right, I don't always agree with her politics, but that's not the point.
Right.
She is both, apart from being a Democrat, she's both a woman and an African American. And looking to who should fill her seat in the future, I think it's very important that an African American, I don't want to say the slot should be reserved for, because that's not the right terminology, but I think it's very important that we have an elected African American on the county council. And I hope that Ms. Cusack would be replaced by an African American, obviously a black African American.
Let's just cut to the
I mean, a Republican African American.
Let's just
but
cut to
still.
cut to the chase here. Joyce Cusack made it very clear to me when I spoke to her after Thursday's county council meeting, or during the lunch break rather, that if Frank Bruno thinks she's gonna just step aside so he can reclaim his glory, or Pat Northey, who's term limited now, this is Pat's last run representing Deltona, and she was a former at-large member as well, and I believe a former county chairwoman. Maybe not the chair,
I
but
don't think so.
at large. Joyce is very clear to me that if either of them wants to throw the name in, if there isn't a replacement that is an African American or another minority, she will run again, because she feels that there hadn't been anybody in the position for 20 years. And let's face it, this county is white and rich in tradition as it's been in terms of being homogeneous, is becoming a lot more diverse. And, you know, Deltona has a mixed, strong Hispanic population. Like you said, it's David Santiago in the legislature
Exactly, the state
now.
legislator from the Deltona area.
You've got, African American population in Smyrna Beach. Daytona Beach is almost 50% black. It's growing. The population is strong. We have a black mayor in Derek Henry in Daytona Beach, very progressive. So I would think that seat would be something that would draw the interest of, what are some candidates out there? Horace Anderson?
Well, I think Horace would do a fine job. I think we have Webster Barnaby over in the southwestern part of the county.
Deltona City Commissioner, brand new.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's very personable, and I think, there's a reason.
A religious man?
Exactly, and there's a reason for term limits. So why do we have like Pat Northey and Frank Bruno? Why I'm just going to switch to a different position and still serve them?
Well, I always found it kind of hypocritical that they have these term limits, but they don't prevent it from jumping from one seat to another.
Well, the county charter just wasn't really carefully drafted. I believe, I'm not 100% certain about this, but I believe that was the intent originally, that they shouldn't be able to shift from the one position to the other and continue a lifetime career in the county council. But the way in which it's drafted, it does make that possible. It's not illegal.
Maybe that's something that can point fruit.
Maybe when the charter is reviewed, that should be changed, but that's an issue for down the road.
Now, I think it should be noted that Frank T. Bruno Jr. did a lot of great things for the county. And his leadership, he had some strong skills and he got a lot of things accomplished. But there are a lot of things that aren't very good, like Sunrail and the expenses that come with that. Which brings us into our next segment, CRAs. There was supposed to be a frank discussion describing what blight is. Bricks and mortar or feet on the street. You know, for example, New Smyrna Beach hiring somebody to write press releases and put up a Facebook page for Do the Loop. Come to New Smyrna Beach and go to all our weekend activities. Do the Loop just means CRA district. I don't know why you have to pay somebody to have this kind of phony thing, except it creates more jobs for the inner circle. Stan, what about the CRAs in terms of, you know, Mr. Deneen, the county chair, was supposed to give them a strong sense of what CRAs, where they're going, and we were under the impression that they'd be capped at like 10 years. Now it's 20 years. His rationale was, well, 10 years may not be enough, but after 10 years we can revisit. And if you're bonding and you're borrowing, it's kind of hard to take away the final 10 years, right? I mean,
If you, obviously.
That's
if
the problem
you
with
have-
some of the CRAs
obviously,
that are
if you have-
placed
If you have committed to a 20-year bond, I don't see how you can take away the final 10 years without renegotiating the bond or paying it off up front or something like this. It's a bit of a problem, and it makes it less likely that the terms of the bond will be changed. But, you know, I think that the CRAs can be demonstrated to have done quite a bit of good in the county, in those areas where the money was expended properly for the purposes intended. My criticism of the CRAs really is that they, the money is gathered up, doesn't come from the county, but the money is provided by the county, and it's given to municipalities to do whatever has been agreed upon within an area which they have agreed is blighted, without, as you say, defining the term blight. And then after that, nobody pays any attention to what happens to the money. And so in some cases, the money has been spent to do a fine job of redeveloping that blighted area. In other cases, it's gone for purposes which cannot by any stretch of the imagination be regarded as the rectification of blight. And so I think that as the money is provided by the county, it should be provided with a certain amount of guideline as to how the money has been spent. The county doesn't need to conduct daily oversight. I mean, it is for the municipality to expend the money and to make certain that that which it is expended on is what it was intended for. But after a certain point, perhaps on an annual basis or biannual basis, there should be an accounting. And the county should be able to be sure and to be able to reassure the state that these monies are spent for the purposes intended. Otherwise, somehow parts of them tend to get drained off for other things.
So there have been some pockets of examples that we've talked about where there's been some successes. The Badcock building in US 1 in Canal, the Penny Saver building in Canal and New Smyrna Beach. I think the biggest example of CRA success that the News Journal actually pointed out was US 1 in South Daytona. It looks nice, but do you need 20 years to do that? Like you said, Dana, there's talk about a project where doing US 1 up and down from Ormond down to
I think New Smyrna
Oak Hill.
area. I heard, well, I also heard around New Smyrna area further down into Daytona, and the thing is,
Well, it would start in Ormond and go all the way down to Oak Hill, all of US 1. Basically, the pockets that they're talking about are Daytona, New Smyrna, Edgewater, where there's some depressed areas where businesses. But let me ask you this. I talked to Morgan Gilreath, and he seems to be of the opinion that if you had more vigorous zoning enforcement and building code enforcement, that a lot of the stuff could be cleaned up. Just putting a fresh painted coat of paint can do wonders. If US 1 is the way it is, isn't that an example of people's spending and shopping habits and things going out to the outlying areas, the 44s, the 1792s? What can you really realistically expect US 1 to be the nirvana of Volusia County again?
Well, Henry, US 1 is the major commercial artery of the eastern part of the county. Died when they built 95.
Right.
And
You remember
that's-
the big oak trees they had? I saw
Of
pictures
course,
of
no,
them.
no, I remember as a boy, there were oak trees that covered the entire road when it was just a two-lane road.
Almost like the
And it was
Loop in
beautiful. It
Ormond.
was like the Loop in Ormond. It was, yes, it was very like that. But it was beginning to develop, and there were fine old houses alongside of it that were bed and breakfasts and hotels and things like that. But there were also for the day, really quite grand motels and that type of thing, which were, one of them was called the Sun and Sand. At the time, it's called something else now, and it's a wreck in South Daytona. But in its day, people used to come from all over the county just to see the neon sign, which was out in front of it. It was a growing, beautifying area, not as a result of county money, but as a result of business people investing their money in what was, and they expected to remain, as I said, the major commercial artery of the county, because so much traffic was moving north and south. With 95, all of that changed. And US 1, in many areas, became blighted. Now, if you create a beautification project, and you spend CRA money on that, it doesn't necessarily, in my mind, follow that you will have prompt economic resurrection in the area. I mean, the living example of that is Beach Street in Daytona Beach, which still has any number of empty storefronts in it, because there simply isn't the business there. All the shopping has moved west.
You had the $27 million Echo, CRA, throw in all the other monies you can think of, News Journal Center for Beach Street. Remember Dunn Toy Store used to be there.
I remember it very well. I used to buy toys there when I was a
President
kid.
Clinton bought a frog for Hillary when he was here back in the day. Beach, you talk about blight, go to Orange Avenue in Daytona Beach. It's one of the worst streets, not just the paving in the street, but
At
the
least they don't fix
neighborhood
that
is
street
bad.
with
Let's
the
just say
pavement
this,
in it.
as a woman, I wouldn't want my car dying on US 1. In certain areas, I would not want my car dying right there.
But how can the county, and this is the thing that got me on Thursday, Pat Northey, of all people, the veteran that she is, started to say something like, from what we've seen going on, well, I'm not going to go there. Why not go there, Stan? You've got the Nicole Carney situation with the ad authority down in southeast Volusia. It's Chambers of Commerce down in New Smyrna, the city of New Smyrna Beach, the whole thing with the tying in of funds where you had, you talk about J.C. Davis appearing before a board. You have a guy named Doug Hodgson who served on the ad authority in New Smyrna Beach, on the CRA board at the same time, and he was the general manager for the Penny Saver owned by the News Journal. And these people are pulling in monies for themselves. We had people in New Smyrna Beach that quit the CRA because they found out that they couldn't reward themselves anymore with their own grants because it's against state law. And then you have these drinking parties. We just had one Fat Tuesday on New Smyrna Beach. Guy that owns Trader's Pub, Dave Fernandez, has been in trouble with the police a dozen times. Fights and violence. The Mayor Adam Barringer's boyhood friend. $60,000 in CRA grants for his bar on Flagler, which, as we've discussed in the past, has been seedied, but has been made over. It's one of the most prosperous streets probably in Volusia County. And he's getting $60,000 for his bar. And he's out there jawing with a reporter with a camera showing people getting sloshed on Fat Tuesday with CRA money.
Once again,
Taxpayer money.
guidelines and accountability.
But where is the accountability? Shouldn't there be a
No,
discussion?
I'm saying there should be. There isn't. There has not been in the past, and there should be.
But are the Republican Are the Republican representatives on the county council going to say, hey, look, before we vote on giving this, don't we need to look at what's here now? Same with the Democrats.
Look, this isn't a partisan issue, Henry. This is a responsibility.
But each party pushed people.
It's irresponsible not to have it.
Right.
I would regard it as almost dereliction for the county council not to establish some degree of oversight and a clear degree of accountability now that the CRA has been in existence long enough that its flaws can be seen. Money is hard to come by these days. And if we in this county are going to develop properly, we need to make sure that every dollar that's spent for that purpose is spent correctly, for the purpose agreed upon and intended.
US 1 is one thing, but after 30 years of Canal Street, another 20 years on top of that, how much good for bad do you throw it? If Canal Street is blighted, after 30 years, another 20 years is going to make a difference? Where does it end? And to me, it's like, where's the discussion about what we have done to this point? Now, I can understand CRAs like for Edgewater or Orange City or Deltona, and they have good plans. I've seen some of these. They're bricks and mortar. There are guidelines. It's pretty much mapped out. But when you have drinking on the street, Main Street example in Daytona Beach, New Year's Eve, 20,000 people on the street with their children getting drunk. It's one thing when Main Street, when you relax the drinking law, the public drinking law, because the street's closed, but you still have children there. And in Smyrna, we've seen from the multiple videos that the police don't do anything. They can't. They're not allowed to, unless there's a major fight. It's everything's for the bar owners. What kind of message does that send for tourism in terms of good tourism?
It depends on what you're looking to attract, but, once again, Henry.
Oh, you're looking to attract trashiness and drunkenness and a guy in a car?
I think obviously there are some elements of the business community who do want to attract people of that sort if they feel that they will spend money in their establishments.
There was a guy
it's all about making a profit. I know about that.
I just want the readers to know, the listeners to know, there was a guy beaten so badly outside the Flagler Tavern on Flagler, he ended up in a coma. I mean...
Look, maybe what's necessary, Henry, is something like a retreat, a couple of day retreat.
To really look at where this money's going.
For the county council, exactly. To take a long, hard look at the whole CRA question, where it's been, where it ought to be, and how to get it to that point and keep it there.
Well, I'll end this segment with the following thought. We can throw in a brief comment because we're running out of time, as the producer says. Nicole Carney issue with paying herself all these big monies and all this accountability, and Jim Deneen, county chair, we have to take over this ad authority immediately. It's an emergency situation. Okay, where's the investigation? Where's FDLE? Where's the state attorney's office? Where's the money being recouped? At the same time, Frank T. Bruno Jr., as we've seen from the multiple listings and the agenda items and the chicken dinner events, is showing himself at every turn. Isn't it ironic that there's no closure on the Nicole Carney issue? The poor woman was left to hang out to dry, and whether she's done something improper or not, where's the result? How can you clean this up? How can you move forward and give 20 years worth of new CRA monies when you still have this open? Stan?
Henry, I don't know where the Nicole Carney matter stands. I don't know if she is still under investigation. I don't know if there is criminal activity contemplated. I don't know if she's being forced in some way to repay money which she allegedly took improperly. I simply don't know. And so I'm not in a position to respond to your question.
Isn't it funny though that you don't know, that none of us know? And it's still an open-ended thing?
And that's why it's what Stan was saying about a retreat for the county council to really, we have a new mix on the county council, to really look at past matters and say, this is the past, what is our present, what's going to be our future.
I think,
map it out.
I think one of the reasons why the public gets so disgusted with government in general, and yes, the Republicans who come in have a lot of promise in terms of what they're trying to do. It's the issue of not speaking. Pat Norley had a chance to open up Pandora's box and get this thing talked about so they can move on. Orange City and Deltona, Edgewater, they're waiting for brand new CRAs. They shouldn't be punished by what New Smyrna Beach has done, or what Daytona Beach may or may not have done with their monies. But where's the dialogue on this? Why is there such a silence? It's almost like you have these overpriced managers and attorneys, and these politicians that get elected say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but then there's all the silence all the way across.
Well, I think so often it's like if Pat Norley is looking at possibly running for something else in the future and going to another seat, she doesn't want to open Pandora's box.
But
She wants
Stan,
to keep the status quo.
but Stan, wouldn't she get more of the energy of the voters if she did stand up and say, hey, this is not right and I want it cleaned up?
Possibly. She might very well, but I can't speak to what motivates Ms. Northey, but it is also possible that,
The managers don't want it.
no, it's also possible that she feels that, once again, that the county council needs to address the matter when it is in command of all the facts and it has had an opportunity to consider it. Once again, I think the county needs,
That's my whole point.
I think the county council needs a couple of days to really focus on this, to go over the history, to go over the current situation, to decide what the future ought to look like and how to get it there. And then, when you're in command of all the facts and you know where you want to go, then open up Pandora's box, and when the little problems rise up, back them over the head like a whack-a-mole.
What's that analogy? History tends to repeat itself if nothing's done. There's some kind of phrase.
Something to the effect that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Exactly.
20 years could be another learning experience from what 30 years didn't teach you to begin with.
Exactly.
All right, we're back with our final segment, and that is the county council approval on a 4-3 vote for Andy Romano Park, which is a beachfront facility, very beautiful. I visited it this weekend. It was a 4-3 vote, but it wasn't a partisan vote. Even though the county council is supposed to be nonpartisan, there are obviously 4 Democrats and 3 Republicans. The people who voted for it were Republican Pat Patterson, Democrat Doug Daniels of Ormond, Pat Patterson of DeLand. Voting also for it were Pat Northey, Democrat of Deltona, and the 4th one was Joyce Cusack, the at-large representative who lives in DeLand. Voting against it were Jason Davis, the county chair, Republican. Also Deb Denny's, the District 3 representative for New Smyrna area, and Josh Wagner, the Daytona area representative. The park is within the driving zone, the northern driving zone of Volusia County. There are at least 3 sizable parks now in the beach. There's the Flagler Avenue Approach Park. There's the Sunsplash Park in Daytona, which is the biggest of them all. And now this new Andy Romano Park, which has a little splash pool where the water comes up and little kids can run through it. It's got a slide, and it's got a little jungle gym type thing. It's got the little corkboard thing that you can walk on that's rubbery and springy. It's got granite tabletop picnic tables, and actually the whole picnic tables are like granite. It's got a couple of burners. You can cook some hamburgers. But what the issue here is, it's within the driving zone. If it had been like maybe a half mile north, it would be in a non-driving zone. What kind of cracks me up is they voted to take cars that are going south, because you can only go one way in that area. You have to exit just before the park, go on to A1A, then go back onto the beach around the park and back down. It's the length of 2 football fields. It's 600 feet, or 300 yards. Yeah, it's a very short distance. Does that make any sense,
No.
Stan?
No, I think, I disagree with the way the county voted. I think it's a mistake to take away any more of the unique driving capacity of our beach. We've got 17 miles of beach. Most of it is drivable. in the sense that it's physically possible to drive and park your car without sinking into the sand. There are 6 areas now in front of which the beach is closed off, so it's really quite segmented already. And
The
I see-
conservation zones you're talking about
Yes,
too.
and I see every reason to expect now that other areas, seeing this as a more recent precedent, will then press their own cases for closing off the business in front of, closing off the beach in front of their businesses, in front of their string of condos, in front of their park, or whatever might happen to exist there, which would give them an argument for closing off the beach. I think that is a serious problem. It affects the tens of thousands of people who use our beach every year.
Tens of thousands. We're
Uh,
talking probably 6 to 8 million visitors a year to the beach.
Well, I don't know that they all park on the beach, but what I'm saying is that we have many, many thousand just of day trippers who come over from the central part of the state, park on the beach, they spend money. They may not spend the night, but they spend money, and then they go back. If we eventually close off more and more of the beach, we restrict the number of those people who can come unless they're willing to spend the greater amount of money to stay in the hotels and motels and that type of thing, or unless the county or someone else lays out the money to construct vertical parking lots, which are ugly as sin, at some place, west of the beach. And then you've got the problem of hordes of beachgoers with their beach equipment running the gauntlet on A1A to try and make it across without getting run over. And I suspect we'll have far more traffic accidents, deaths and injuries on A1A as a result of that than we ever would on the beach, where people only drive, or only supposed to drive 10 miles an hour anyway.
And when you think about it about beach driving, is that when you look at it, you have a lot of tourists, but also it's a lot of locals that, are going over for the day for the beach, that maybe Volusia County area. So basically, you're cutting off access to the locals that can't afford a hotel or don't live in the condos.
Well, what I
When
don't,
you start taking that access
what I
away.
don't understand is, I can understand the argument of the beach is not a playground. All right? But Deb Denny's made a good point when I talked to her the other night. She was like, Henry, they're just replacing the sand with concrete. So why is the playground a playground? If you can't have the cars there because children want to go from the beach to the ocean, it seems to me that maybe we should have a DCF site set up on the beach, a branch office of the DCF for the parents that have their backs to their children, yakking on the phone or texting or sleeping, and the 2-year-old's running around chasing birds, and there's this gigantic truck going by. It seems like there's going to be a lot more contraction. And Josh Wagner made some good points. It's like, well, the Shores is going to want to come to us and say, well, we want to have this particular area. Where does it end? And once you take the cars off, you can't.
You'll never get them back on.
But see, the county management did something rather crafty here, from the way Deb Denny's explained it to me. They did a special permit instead of, it would have taken a super majority, 5 out of 7 votes, to take the cars off. But what they did was, and of course they say, well, it's a permit, but we can take it back. It's not permanent.
Yes, that is theoretically possible, but
But I'm not sure the federal government will allow that. And the thing is, why would you build it there? I'm sure there are other parcels of land you could find further up along the shoreline in a non-driving zone. Literally, not even a quarter of a mile is a non-driving zone. So why put it right? I don't understand government when they do this thing, and then they expect the county government to give them what they want because they've spent a couple million on a beach.
Well, my concern is that this beach should be administered to provide the greatest benefit to the greatest number. And you don't do that by restricting the number of people who can access the beach throughout. Moreover, this isn't a unique thing. This is part of a process that has been ongoing for decades. I remember when I was a teenager, you could access the beach at night.
But you could have bonfires.
And we used to. We used to have big parties on it. But the point is that there were just a whole host of things which were routinely done on the beach in those days, which are no longer done. And this is just part of that trend to further restrict public activities on the beach. I think that's a mistake.
Well, I can understand in some cases where, for example, behind Ocean Walk and the Hilton, where you want the cars gone because you want to draw tourists that feel like they don't want to get run over, or they don't want to have all these trashy day trippers coming in and being in front of their hotel. But
Or sometimes you have, like the band show, we have concerts and you don't want people having the honking horns,
Right.
that type of thing. But like Stan was talking about, I remember when I was a kid, it was like going down there just with my family in the car from DeLand to Daytona was kind of a hike back then, just 92 down. And with the way my parents drive, it took a while. But also my brother going on church bus trips down to New Smyrna Beach or Daytona Beach and enjoying it. It was a lot of locals that came from the west side over to the east side.
What I find amazing from this whole roundtable discussion today, whether it's the beach or the Cabbage Patch or CRAs or the Speedway, is it's the same analogy. We have these overpriced managers, administrators, attorneys, part-time politicians, and they're thinking about the now. Yeah, sure, 20 years for this, 10 years for that, 30 years for this. And here we are now in the year 2013, and there still isn't any place really to park your car outside of the beach. And yet you're putting in these picnic areas, and these are not cheap. These are multi-million-dollar facilities. These are not like playgrounds like you find like the All Children's Park in Port Orange, where it's just some brick and, breaking up a tree bark and a nice little slide set. This is high-tech stuff. And yet, with all the ECHO funding and the Volusia Forever, we don't have the beach parking. But we have this fragmented approach to, can we do something? Or is it too late?
It's an interesting question. I mean, you have to ask yourself, first of all, who would benefit? The people who own the land on which the parking garages will be constructed, the people who build and operate the garages.
Let's make this clear though, let's stop right there. They built a parking garage across the street from the Ocean Walk.
Yes.
My son is now 19. When he was a little kid, not even a preschooler, we used to have father and son night, get us out of the house. And I'd take him on the tram from the parking garage down to Main Street and do the loop all the way around and back again, through the beach and back up. We were the only ones on the tram. And he'd wave to the tourists, and he'd have a plastic alligator, and these bikers with all the biker chicks would think he was a cute little boy. And, it was a fun thing. I'd buy him an ice cream, and it was a great way to spend a Friday night with your kid and give the wife a break. Here we are now, today. People want parking garages. Parking, like you said, they're vertical, they're ugly.
They are. No, people want to come and park on the beach.
And you're not going to haul your umbrella, your blankets, your coolers, and all that stuff.
No, everyone wants it right there in their car. They can pull it out as they need. They have their picnic baskets. They're not gonna, their coolers with their lunches, that type of thing, or they go to a beachside vendor and get a slushy, things like that. You're really affecting, like I said, not just the tourists, but a lot of locals. You're really taking away the Volusia County access for the local citizens that are day trippers.
I got a great idea for the county. Take the CRA monies, take the ECHO monies, take the Volusia Forever monies, do a study, you're gonna do studies anyway, and get us a north to south lineage of parking. And get this thing settled once and for all. But this probably won't happen in our lifetime, will it, Stan?
Maybe this is a campaign for us to no longer sunbathe.
That would save skin cancer issues.
Exactly.
Stan, you've got the last word.
I don't think you should hold your breath.
Well, with that said, for Dana Doherty Swanson, for Stan Escudero, this is Henry Frederick, and this has been the Roundtable. We hope that you found our discussion enlightening, and your feedback is more than welcomed. Thank you.